And Brandon, now it is time to move on to our next one, and we are going to War Eagle as we're going to talk about the Auburn Tigers here on the podcast as we are now down to 2 teams. I had to.
Well done.
I had to War Eagle for our Auburn fans coming on into the podcast, but this one's easy. This one's an easy starting point. It's a quarterback. It's Jarrett Stidham. And really the easiest question is, how much better is Jarrett Stidham going to make the Auburn Tigers in 2017?
Well, I think the biggest key for this team is how well Stidham performs, but I think even bigger than that is can he stay healthy? You know, we saw him play really well at Baylor, but another thing we couldn't see him do at Baylor was stay healthy
on the field.
And I think that ultimately that's the biggest issue for Auburn is they've got themselves a really good quarterback. They've got themselves a stable quarterback, a guy who knows how to throw the football and was asked to do it a whole lot in the Big 12 over at Baylor. But his health is a huge concern. And I only say huge concern is because the minute that he were to go down, I think the really high expectations for Auburn would all of a sudden disappear. Because I think a lot of them are riding on Stidham. And I do think that, and
he looked really good in spring practices,
and that's the reason why is because this guy is super good. They know what they got with him. They know that he's really good, and he is. And Auburn, with a full season of a healthy Jarrett Stidham, could be that team that is ready to rival every other team in the SEC West and is ready to head on. And, tit for tat with the big gun. If Stidham can't stay healthy, though, that just goes out the window in my mind. But let's not forget, too, that their new offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey from Arizona State, is coming in. And they're going to be asked to throw the football more. And that's why getting Stidham was a huge piece for them. But let's also not forget that he's no longer at Baylor. And he's not going to be whipping the ball all around the field because they're going to be looking for a more balanced attack.
Well, and Stidham was actually asked about that. And I'm getting this quote from Athlon Sports where Stidham says, and I quote, "Some of the similarities that Coach Lindsey has with what I've done at Baylor, some of the deeper passing game, it's a lot of fun. A lot of it I've done before, kind of a second nature with some of it. He brings a lot of excitement to the offensive room," end quote. And really, like you said, it all rides on Stidham. If Stidham goes down, the season to me is a little bit, I don't want to say over, but close to over because, yes, you can be like, well, we've got a starter behind him and Sean White, who started last year. But Sean White's also had injuries, too. He has, 4 injuries in the last 2 seasons, including his broken arm in the Sugar Bowl. So that alone makes it impossible. Like, it makes it weird that he's going to have a full season. So Stidham's the guy. And because of what we saw in spring practices, I think that all the hype this year for Auburn should be that Iron Bowl game. I know that the players are going to go out there and take it one game at a time or whatever cliche they're going to throw our way. But to us, who we can focus on things, I look at their schedule, and besides Clemson on the road and LSU on the road, maybe Georgia, but that's at home. I really look at it and I go, I want to fast forward to November 25th and watch Alabama and Auburn in the Iron Bowl, because I think that is going to be, A, the best game of the season, and B, that will be the game that not only decides the SEC West, but decides the playoff. Whoever wins that game makes the playoff.
Only if Stidham's there.
Well, that's
only if Stidham's their
I
quarterback.
think he will be the quarterback all the way through. I don't think he's going to get injured.
And I think a big part of that's going to be their offensive line, too. They only lose 2 guys. They return a couple of stars on the offensive line, which is going to be a huge help for the entire team and certainly for Stidham and for their running back. And Cameron Petway, we cannot forget Cameron Petway Jr.
SEC leading rusher.
And we cannot forget his over 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. And we cannot forget that he missed 3 games. I mean, my goodness, this guy was well on his way to being the best running back in the SEC, if not beyond the SEC.
You think of how high Leonard Fournette got drafted. Just wait until he comes out. If he can do the same thing, even a little bit better, and I mean, even behind him in Kerryon Johnson, 182 carries, 890 yards for himself, and he had more touchdowns than Petway. He had 11 to Petway's 7. 7-11.
Oh, thank heaven.
Think about that. But I think the offense should be in good hands. The offense is going to drive this team, and like you said, Brandon, in I want to say it was the LSU portion that we just talked about, and we're getting to that where it's like the teams that can score offensively, and we're not just relying solely on our defenses, kind of like what we looked at with LSU. But this is a team where I look at it where they are going to challenge Alabama for the number 1 spot in the division. I know there's the question mark of if Stidham can stay healthy, but like I said, I'm assuming in my head, making the prediction that he is. Absolutely.
I think to not look at defense, though, with Auburn would be a crime if we did not do that. And I think that, one of the biggest...
Losing some pieces.
Carl Lawson.
NFL.
Montavious Adams. He's no longer there. Those are two of the guys. And however, 6 of their 7 tacklers will be returning this year. Up front is going to be a key for them. And will they be able to get to the quarterback? So last year they ranked 7th in scoring defense. 7th in the nation scoring defense. So that's a really big thing for Auburn. And if they're able to return to that form, it's going to be pretty good. That means you're putting pressure on the quarterback. That means you're getting to the quarterback. That means you're doing what you're supposed to be doing defensively. However, the run defense is going to have to continue to be good. And if it's good as it can be, they will be very, very successful. And here's another stat for you. Since 2015, Auburn is 1-7 when the defense gives up more than 200 yards on the ground. 1-7. So
contain that running game.
Contain the running game and contain the running quarterbacks and all of that. Because if you don't, numbers show you suck.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that I find interesting is I'm looking, like I said, at the one preview from Athlon Sports, and kind of like what I was getting to with my kind of pseudo prediction was that I do believe the Iron Bowl is going to settle things. I think that Auburn and then the team we're going to talk about next in Roll Tide will be the best 2 teams in this, not only conference, but in this side of the conference. And you look at last year. Last year, they were a team that well into the playoff talk into November. Then the injuries took a toll. But now this year you add Stidham. If he's able to stay healthy, I think they could be even more so a playoff talk presence. They got to prove it to make it, but they could well be into the conversation into November up to that November 25th game against Alabama. But the thing I find interesting, and I want to read this and then get your thoughts on it, it says, if they're not able to, like Lindsey coming in and then Stidham propel them into the conversation this year, if they're not, AD Jacobs will have some tough decisions to make after the season. The Tigers team is too loaded to be an afterthought on the national level. Is that them basically saying, well, if they don't, Gus Malzahn could be fired? Because that's how I see that. I see that as if the AD is looking to make a change, it's cutting off the head of the team, which is the head coach.
And that's the first time that we've brought up Gus Malzahn's name. And we cannot forget that, Chip Lindsey is the new offensive coordinator. He's not the new coach. Gus Malzahn it's still his team. It's still his offense.
It's Mad Hatter.
It's still, his baby. But I think that you bring in a new offensive coordinator to try and even things out, run pass, and make yourselves a little bit more elite offensively. I think that's a great move. I think being able to land Jarrett Stidham great move. Good quarterback, can throw the football, strong arm, reads the field well, loves throwing the ball deep. Great move. However, like you just mentioned,
it's a Kevin Sumlin situation.
If you don't, but it's not. But it's don't tell me it's Kevin Sumlin situation, because they didn't go out specifically land this big quarterback name who is some solid stud. They didn't go out and try and retool their entire offense.
But hear this. This is what I'm saying. This is how it's the Kevin Sumlin situation to me. It's not an exact fit, but you look at it. Gus Malzahn comes in 2013. They go to the national championship game. They lose that to Jameis Winston. Ever since then, it's been 8-5, 4-4, 7-6, 2-6, 8-5, 5-3 last year. Last year was the best since that national championship season. If they don't make that push to be like, oh man, we were one loss away and we only had one loss on the year, and that was to Alabama. If they're not making that push for the playoff, I look at the wins and losses and I'm like, it's kind of similar in that sense of you had a really good season your first year. What's been going on since? That's what I would be looking at if I'm the AD. If this year isn't that we pushed and man, if we would have won that one game, we would have been in.
Well, I think that if it does not go the way that they're hoping that it goes, you do sit back at the end of the season and you look at it and you go, all right, we went out, we got a new offensive coordinator to better this offense, to make it better, to make it more competitive. Okay. We made sure that we got Jarrett Stidham and, really encouraged him to be part of the Auburn Tigers. Mm-hmm. He came over. Okay. Gus, we got these things for you. We got you some new toys to play with, and it didn't go over how we pictured. And after having the last couple of seasons the way that they've been, that really is an easy way to put him on the hot seat and then to get rid of him. Because it's not like a Kevin Sumlin, they're just using the guys that they have in their system and kind of going with it that way. You've gone out of your way to try and land the transfer. You did it. You've gone out of your way to steal a guy away from another team. Lindsey from Arizona State. You've done that. You've made these changes. The head coach has got to be part of the talks to do this, who wants this. And if it does not work, who do you think they're going to blame? Obviously, you're right. It's going to be Gus Malzahn. And his bottom is going to be a little hotter than usual. But I don't think that that's going to end up happening, because I do think that they're going to be good.
Question. And this is one where I'm on the same boat as you. Like I said, I think it's going to come down to the Iron Bowl game.
And I have a question really quickly.
Go ahead.
Do you think both Alabama and Auburn going into that game are both undefeated?
Alabama, yes. Auburn, I'm going to say... See, it's tough on Auburn because the only game... there's two games I look at. Clemson... Well, three. Clemson, LSU, and Georgia. It's hard to say. It's hard to say that they go undefeated. I mean, I want to say they'll beat Clemson. I know that in our Clemson preview, we got a lot of comments about people saying, yeah, you're harping too much on the quarterback. We're going to be fine. We got the defense. We got the pieces around him. I don't know, though. If Auburn's clicking early, that could be a win for them. I'm going to go with Auburn might have one loss going into that game. But even with one loss, it will still, I still believe that Iron Bowl is going to be winner goes to the SEC title game to play either Georgia or Florida. And if you win, you're going to the playoff. The thing that I think would be more interesting is if we get a close enough game in that one to where we get a situation where, let's say, Alabama comes in undefeated, Auburn comes in with one loss. Auburn barely beats them. Auburn wins the SEC, and then either one of two things happen. Them and Alabama get in, or if we see a Big Ten situation of, yeah, you know what, Auburn, you were good, but you lost to this team earlier on, and Alabama only lost to you, so we're going to put Alabama in over you. Like, I have a weird feeling that Auburn could end up being the Penn State of this year. They could be the Penn State of this year and miss the playoffs.
You're right. They could. And I know that some people are probably saying, well, you know, you guys, you're really kind of going out of the box on this one. You know,
Sometimes you got to. It's boring in the box, Brandon.
It's so boring in the box.
I don't like being in the box.
But I think you're right.
It could be a boat.
But it's not... I don't want anyone to tell us that it's too far-fetched to look at Auburn and say, no, they wouldn't do that. No. It would be silly if you didn't look at Auburn and look at what they're adding and look at what they're going to be able to do. And I think you would be very silly to not look at them and go, they could be very good.
I think they're going to be very good.
This. They could be here. This could be a possibility. All based on health. All based on health. But I think that when you have a running back like Petway Jr. is, when you have a quarterback like Stidham is, you are set up for success right away.
And that's why I got one last question I'm going to ask you. This is on the flip side. Let's say, and this is back to that situation where you were talking about AD conversation with Gus Malzahn to force him out. Let's say they do less than stellar. Let's say Clemson, Georgia, LSU, and Alabama all find answers for the Auburn Tigers. I'm going to ask you this to end it. And do you think that maybe a thought at the end, if Gus Malzahn is pushed out, and that's the only way this is happening, is if he gets pushed out, does Auburn go, you know what? I know that he was an offensive coordinator and wasn't the head coach before coming here, but we have Stidham, was only a sophomore this year. We're pairing him with the coach. Do they promote then Lindsey or look for an outside option? Promote from within with Lindsey to work him and attach him to Stidham, which would be a junior next year. Or say, you know what, we're going to keep Lindsey here and we're going to look outside the organization to find our answer.
You know, I think a lot of times, especially if they liked the relationship between Lindsey and Stidham, and even more if Stidham really enjoyed that relationship, I think that you could see something like that happening to be more likely. But in the back of my mind, for now, it's Les Miles is still there. Les Miles is still there.
Could you imagine if he came to... If they got rid of... I mentioned Mad Hatter before we recorded this. The real Mad Hatter is Les Miles. Could you... Jeez. I could not imagine. I would love it, but I couldn't imagine it.
No, it is kind of hard to imagine. It had to be... What we've seen already is it had to be the right fit, because we've seen we saw a lot of college football positions, head coaching positions come open and available, really good ones this past offseason, and he was not in one of them.
Yep.
So I think it's got to be the right fit for both sides, but just knowing he's out there is interesting. But I'd rather focus on Gus Malzahn having a good season instead of Gus Malzahn being fired at the end of the year.
Like I said, I don't see him getting fired because I see it coming down to that Iron Bowl game and winner take all going to the playoffs. But any last thoughts before I throw it on to them, the listener and the viewer?
No, on this one I don't.
Good. Brandon's not going to cut me off, so I can throw it to you guys. Let us know down below in the comment section. What do you guys think for a good old War Eagle and how they are going to do this year? I had to do it another time. I had to do it a second time. It's so fun. It's so fun to do that I just wanted to do it again.
Is it fun?
It's quite fun. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section.